we can talk about all these things frankly and fairly and sensibly.
Okay, I'm sorry we're out of time. We'll come back and finish some of those points later at another time, I hope. Thank you very much for coming in to talk to us tonight.
And congratulations on the new format and time, and I hope it's a big success.
Thank you. In the 2 years it's been running, the Royal Commission on Child Sexual Abuse has heard the gruelling testimonies of well over 3,000 victims. Next week it will turn to the crucial issue of how best to compensate them. Laws restricting civil action against child sex offenders have been a real impediment to victims getting proper compensation. But that's not the only area where some of them feel they've been cheated. It's common that historical child sex offenders avoid jail sentences. Now that's because under the law the offences are judged and punished on the laws that existed at the time. So back in the 60s, 70s and 80s, indecently assaulting a child wasn't considered a jailable offence. So if someone is prosecuted today for offences they committed decades ago, the chances are they'll walk free. More from Steve Kinane.
It was the Royal Commission's 23rd case study, and one of the most explosive so far. Knox Grammar, the elite private school on Sydney's North Shore, which harboured 5 paedophile teachers between 1970 and 2009. The Uniting Church School has been criticised for failing to protect its students, but those same students also feel down by the justice system. Of the 5 teachers convicted of either sexual assault or indecent assault or both, just one, Craig Treloar, was given a jail sentence.
It's very hard to comprehend how those perpetrators would deserve a suspended sentence after they'd been found guilty of such heinous crimes. It's a huge blow to victims who have often who have struggled with depression or anxiety.
Craig Hughes Cashmore helps run support groups for male survivors of childhood sexual assault. He says the Royal Commission has brought many former Knox students out of the shadows.
We've heard from 13 former Knox students in the last 3 weeks. We've also heard from the parents of 3 former Knox students who have committed suicide. Of those 13, only a couple have been to the police and reported the incidences, and only a few have engaged with the Royal Commission itself. So most haven't. Some of these guys live interstate, some live in regional New South Wales.
Craig Hughes Cashmore understands firsthand the frustrations of seeing perpetrators of child sexual abuse escape jail sentences.
I had 2 perpetrators. One was a so-called family friend. I broke down at school and I disclosed to a teacher that I trusted about those incidents. And at that point, rather than helping me, he actually started sexually abusing me himself.
His teacher was found guilty on 4 counts of unlawful sexual intercourse, but avoided jail time.
I felt really let down. I had gone through hell, really, reporting the abuse. It was a big decision to do it. It took years to get to court. It had a huge impact on my family. And then at the end of it all, to see him not serve 1 day in jail was, I mean, I can't describe what that was like. It's hugely offensive to me and to every other victim. And I really worry about the message that sends out to the community, and in particular to victims of abuse who may be considering coming forward. Why would you do it?
Today, New South Wales Greens MP David Shoebridge launched a 3-point plan to deliver justice for victims of abuse, including reforming the sentencing laws.
The primary reason is that when courts are sentencing now, they apply the maximum sentences that were in place at the time of the offence, and that's right and proper. But they also seek to apply the social values that were in place in the 1970s. And in the 1970s, courts were basically saying, well, it's just sexual abuse. It's a lesser kind of offence. And they were regularly giving non-custodial sentences. Judges are being told now that they have to apply those same social values, even though they're sentencing in 2015.
David Shoebridge says a simple law can reform the sentencing process.
We need to make an amendment to the sentencing laws, not just in New South Wales, but around the country, that says, yes, you apply the maximum penalties that were in place at the time. But when you're applying those penalties, make sure you apply the values that we understand them today.
David Shoebridge also wants the churches to be prevented from hiding their assets in trusts and the statute of limitations on civil claims for child abuse to be removed. Generally, you've got 3 years after you turn 18 to launch a civil case. That limitation looks set to be removed in Victoria.
It's vital and historic to change the statute of limitations because the inquiry into child sexual abuse that delivered the landmark Betrayal of Trust report revealed that on average it takes 23 years between the incident and people being able to report what has happened to them. And that's because there's this horrendous transferal of guilt and that people feel ashamed of what's happened and they're in turmoil with how they should deal with it.
Former victims of pedophile teachers at Knox Grammar have had the statute of limitations used against them when pursuing civil action.
I don't understand why anyone would want to protect criminals from being brought to justice. Why should they have, a limited time for victims to bring something to light?
Initially, the Uniting Church pleaded the statute of limitation in Scott's case. It took years for them to finally agree to a settlement. Scott is scathing of the way the church dealt with him.
From the initial communication from my lawyers, it took nearly 4 years to reach settlement, which was completely unnecessary, and it really was them using every dirty trick in the book to string it out, make it as difficult as possible for me to actually bring the matter before to hearing or even have a settlement conference. Or even have a meeting with their lawyers. And through that period, they basically lied and changed the goalposts. They said, oh, we want to do this, and then they'd change it and string me out for another 6 months and then change their tactics again. And they played a very dirty game.
On Wednesday, the Royal Commission will hold a public hearing on redress and civil litigation. It's expected the reform of limitation laws will be a key item on the agenda.
And the Uniting Church gave us a statement tonight expressing their deep sorrow for the pain and suffering caused by sexual abuse at Knox Grammar. You'll find their full statement on our website, along with the interview with Malcolm Turnbull. Just go to abc.net.au/Lateline. Well, Emma Alberici will be here with you tomorrow night. I'll see you again next week. Good night.